Robert, the first episode of Bigelow Podcast is out there. The response, surprising to me at least, has been overwhelmingly positive. A lot of people are still digesting it. In UFO world, usually somebody's attacking you right off the bat, but this was pretty good. It was well received. The question I get from a lot of people who watched it is, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it now? And how far do you want to go?
So I think the initial push was sometime back with the publishing of Jim Lacatski's book in 2023. And then he did a sequel in 25 and another one in 2026. And I have all three of those books here on the table. And then later was when I was with the president and was doing the disclosure advisory kind of thing with him and giving him some help and ideas and so on. I realized that that I was rowing upstream on this thing against the tide, and the tide was what the Pentagon had already decided they were going to do, and what Aero actually meant as a disguise and probably a fraudulent effort to squash disclosure. And so I thought, well, this isn't fair to the president if this is going on behind his back. And then if he wants honesty and disclosure, then he needs support from the government, from all these other people, all the, that are rowing the other direction. So I would like to, I actually flagged specific areas in Lacatski's book here, the one that he authored in 2023, I think it is. Yeah. And then also refer to some things that Lacatski and George Knapp and Colin Kelleher authored in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, because you guys did a really good job.
By the way, before we dive into that, I don't know if you've seen how much of the reaction on social media you've seen to episode 1, but it's pretty overwhelming and very creative too. There's a guy named Joe Merja who made a graphic of you sitting with the president in the Oval Office, handing him that book. Yeah. That's very, very clever.
Yeah. And I saw that too. And you're looking through the window.
Yeah. I didn't see that part of it, but it's funny. I think we'll probably maybe post it there. Yeah. There are a bunch of other likenesses of you wearing sunglasses, looking like an alien. And
well, some of these are cool because they're fun.
Yeah.
It makes people laugh and it's not to be taken seriously. And so they're kind of fun.
And it's funny what people will notice. They notice this photo right here in the background, and they'll comment on it on social media.
There's actually an interesting story behind that photo.
Let's hear
it. Gathering. That's a photo of a group of us that Lawrence Rockefeller convened at the Rockefeller Ranch right at the base of the Grand Teton mountain range in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And we were there to discuss the pros and cons of his position on disclosure. Way back then. That was a long time ago. Linda Howe was there. John Mack was there. Bruce Maccabee. A number of other folks were there that are well known. And his take was to convince the president, which at the time was Bill Clinton, that he needed to step up and produce the disclosure that was necessary about the phenomena and admit that it exists. I wasn't sure that he knew, that the president knew. So I had my good friend, Harry Reid. In fact, I was more than just speculating. I had kind of proof, because there were Hubble, which you mentioned his name yesterday, right, wrote a book, and in that book it revealed something that Clinton had said. So I said to Harry, I said, look, I want you to take this book and show it to Bill and say, did you really say this? And in there it said, President Clinton had said, before I leave office, I want to know who really killed JFK. And what is all this UFO ET stuff all about? And Harry said, did you really say that? Yes. And he said, wouldn't you like to know? Well, Harry had sat in on many of our meetings for NIDS, numerous times. And so he already had a feel for what's going on because we had world-class people in that room. We had people from agencies, we had military people, we had terrific researchers, people that worked at Los Alamos. We had every category you can think of.
Astronauts.
We had Edgar Mitchell and Jack Schmidt there. We had a military Air Force general there. We had Ian Stevenson was there, and Bruce Grayson was there, and Emily Cook was there. Jessica Utz was there. And so we had Marty Pilch and others that were directors of Los Alamos, and Christopher Green, Hal Putoff, Jacques Vallée was there. So we had the cream of the crop of thinkers, on the subjects of the two big ones: are we alone, and what happens to you after you die, right? And so I didn't have a chance to tell Lawrence that I had found out that Clinton didn't know.
So Lawrence Rockefeller was under the impression that Clinton knew what? Knew nothing? Or was
that he did know. He was read in, and he was going to try to convince him to confess, to admit, to participate in the disclosure process, get it started anyway.
Hillary Clinton was involved in this at some point with the Rockefellers, right? With Lawrence Rockefeller. I think I don't know if she was at this meeting, but later on?
I don't know anything about Hillary being involved.
All right.
Confirmation was I think where I was advocating that it happened, as we were talking about on the show here, the last show. I don't recall anything about Hillary doing that.
So there you are working on the research, doing some investigations, working with the NIDS team, and trying to at least let the president know, or that was a goal, is to let him know, hey, this is real, and hopefully he would do something about it.
Yeah.
And you're doing the same thing now. Many presidents later, you're still doing the same thing.
Well, can I read some things? Because I don't want to screw it up. I want to get it right as to the dates and the twist here, the spin that has happened over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 years. So in Lacatski's book, and this has been sanctioned, this has been briefed and scrubbed, as have all of his books, all 3 of his books, from the Pentagon and the
Doppler process.
The DIA, yeah. So he writes in the introduction here, on June 25, 2021, was a revolutionary day when the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, made the long-awaited announcement that UFOs were real. Okay? So June 25, 2021, ODNI said they're real. In releasing their report entitled Preliminary Assessment, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, ODNI provided their sober assessments that UFOs no longer were to be ridiculed and mocked. Part of the media coverage included statements like, "We absolutely do believe that we're seeing not simply sensor artifacts. There are things that physically exist." They confirmed it. Then go forward, and 5 months later, Deputy Secretary Kathleen Hicks announced the creation of a new organization run by the Pentagon called Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. Who the hell comes up with these names?
I think that acronym, they started pronouncing it AIMSOG, which
I don't know. So then, so 5 months later, you have that initiative. Then on July 15th, 2022, Kathleen Hicks renames it again and changes it and expands the scope. And she calls it the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, which exists today, I think, as the tip of the sword, in this effort by the government.
To push back.
And I'm not sure how much the president today, Trump, knows about this, but he should. And so then there's a close coordination, Lacatski writes, between the Pentagon spokesman, Susan Gao, and Kirkpatrick, Dr. Kirkpatrick, became obvious after the Aero report on UFOs was released on January 12, 2023. The report was notable for its blandness and lack of detail, and noted that 510 reports had been accumulated by August 30 of 2022. That's in a very short window, very short time. Then on April the 19th, 2023, Kirkpatrick testified before Senator Gillibrand's Senate Armed Services Committee. I'm assuming he's testing under oath. He's swearing. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I want to underscore today that only a very small percentage of UAP reports display signatures that could reasonably be described as anomalous. Kirkpatrick added, Aero has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. This is April the 19th, 2023.
It's a far cry from what ODNI said in 2021, right? And it's also a far cry from what ODNI is saying now. They just issued, they started a program last year called DIG that looked into a number of different interesting topics. They asked me and Jeremy Corbell for some help in getting people to come forward. They have since announced that it was all nonsense, that it's all grifters and liars and people who want attention. All of it. Wave of their hand and wipe it out.
So doesn't this really stink? I mean, we've been on a lot of cattle mutilation cases, and they're so bad, that's so rank, the odor and the smell from those animals, it burns your throat, to breathe and get anywhere close to them. It just burns your throat. This has that kind of a sting to it, So I think that we have a contamination here, which is pushing against disclosure. This serious. It's really serious.
There have been periods like this in the past, where the public is deeply interested, the media take the topic seriously, members of Congress are asking questions, a push for some kind of transparency or disclosure, and they tend to go away. It's what it's been building up to the point where you could talk to the president and say, hey, this is serious. And yet people in his own administration, whether he knows it or not, are doing their best to quash it.
Well, this has national security implications because Reid was right. Senator Reid was right, and you guys cover this in your book, and so you're talking about by the end of May 2009, the program started in September of 2008.
AAWSAP, we're talking about AAWSAP.
Our program, AAWSAP, and that was the only real program. That was the mother of all programs since Blue Book ended in '69. It was terminated. So you and I recall, and other researchers do too, you had Project Sign, Project Grudge, the Robinson panel, and the coup de grace, the Condon report, all cover-up efforts. Every single one of them cover-up efforts. And it turned out, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Blue Book was also.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and so all these years, DIA starts the AAWSAP program, and for the first time, you have an honest approach to discovery process, to trying to learn what everything is about, and all the other paranormal events. And we were a UFO program, but the wisdom of Jim Lacatski was great because he knew that there are ancillary kinds of events that occur that are really paranormal basket kinds of things. This goes into the consciousness aspect of physics and everything. That is a really interesting domain to talk about, which is foundational to everything, George. It's consciousness ultimately is responsible for everything in the universe that you can think of. Everything.
Consciousness is here before the universe is here, you think?
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
that's it.
No,
okay.
you
All
opened
right.
up the
All
box.
right.
Wait a second. Okay. First of all, we have proof that you survived your container, which is a huge friggin' step for people to digest that. If you have certain religious backgrounds, or you're a confirmed staunch atheist, or maybe a staunch agnostic kind of person, you can't digest this. It doesn't. It's very difficult to swallow it and try to understand it. If you're a researcher and extensively, it really it matters a lot. And also, if you've had demonstrations, personal demonstrations and exhibitions of things, it really helps. And sometimes you recall what you witnessed and what you saw, and you just say, did that really happen? Yeah, it really happened. Those things really happened, multiple different kinds of things. And so the thing of it is, the probability, my opinion is, the universe is an open system. It's not closed. It's not finite, which means it didn't have a beginning. Open systems don't have a start and a stop. It's not a finite system. It's open. It's the consciousness aspect is that we have on the table over here the results from a contest that we initiated in 2021. It took the entire year. And it was about proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the survival of permanent bodily death is real.
That we go on. And so you become a function of thought. And so you say, well, how is that possible without a body, without a container? That's impossible. It's not. And you have to get into all kinds of things that thought is very powerful. And it's not just because the Heisenberg double slit experiment in quantum mechanics. That's the bare tip of the iceberg. That is, Dr. Bob John and Brenda Dunn in the basement of the chemistry building at Princeton had their laboratory on being able to have a computer screen that had a static line across the screen. And this was a really simple experiment, but a lot of fun. And then you had a random event generator causing a second line to occur. And those electrons are being flipped 1,000,000 times a second by the random event generator. So it should always be 50-50. The line is equal. It's not deviating in that. So if you're sitting there concentrating, if you're trying to concentrate, you can make a deviation in that line above the static or below the static line. And it works. And he had hundreds of thousands of trials. He had a lot of the students there from Princeton doing those trials. And he wrote a terrific book on this. Okay, this is just an elementary, basic kind of understanding that consciousness can have an effect on inanimate, on material products, on materials, by just pure observation. You can have an effect on subatomic particles. I'll put it that way. That's the appropriate vernacular. And you cause deviations according to your intent. So consciousness has an effect in our dimension that we can initiate through various other kinds of things. Clairvoyance, precognition, remote viewing, mediumship. There are a lot of ways that not all mediums are fraudulent. And there's some gold star remote viewers. And SRI, Stanford Research Institute, and friends of ours that we know, Hal Puthoff and Kit Green, were very involved in that. And they studied people like Uri Geller for extensively, and phenomenal performers. And one of the things they learned that's kind of fun is that most people have the ability to function to produce anomalous results that our normal five senses shouldn't be able to produce. And you're not using those, you're using a sixth kind of sense, So back to the universal situation, if you have a universe that never had a beginning and never had an end, and you still have a mystery of things moving away, which is fine until the Hubble became antiquated, because it can only see out about 13.5 billion light years.
Well, the Webb telescope goes 33 billion, 34 billion light years, and then it becomes very difficult for the theory. And remember, Big Bang is just a theory. It's not fact. It has nothing to do with fact. I'll tell you maybe about a conversation I had with Michio Kaku for about an hour on the God equation book that he wrote. Interesting thing there. Anyway, so you have something that falls apart as a Big Bang, as a theory of a beginning. And there never was a satisfactory theory about that at all. And it took about, 11 different theories for string theory to be able to function, to close the donut, to close the loop, to make it work. And they used hand calcs, which is a euphemism for forcing the math to work. And they made up the constants as to what existed pre-bang. And so because you had a particle, you're saying that everything was created from nothing, and something that was very, very small, smaller than a sugar cube. And that later expanded, but you're not exactly sure how it expanded. And you have no explanation for where did the instructions come from to cause the expansion. And by the way, where did the initial cube come from?
Yeah.
And you're talking about a density of mass that is impossible for the amount of mass that we already see. But we have another problem, and that is entropy. All material objects eventually run out of control and they decay, and that is a function of entropy. And so, we don't see, if you have an open universe and you have order, there's an order in our universe, in our galaxies. They don't discombobulate like they should after it's 1 billion or 2 years. And they're lasting 10, 12, maybe 14 billion years. They shouldn't. There's a problem here. The problem is we have a huge amount of energy we can't identify. I think I know what it is. And they have words like dark energy and dark matter, okay? Which is 96% of all the friggin' energy in the universe.
But we haven't quite found it yet.
We don't know what the hell it is. But part of it, the dark energy part, prevents entropy. It provides order. So that these huge systems, these gigantic systems, like the Milky Way is like 150,000 light years, and it's elliptical in length and about 75,000 light years in diameter. Huge. Each light year is 6 trillion miles, and the nearest star is 24 trillion miles away, 4 light years, so huge distances. And so that's part of the problem, that they can't get here from there kind of thinking, right. Okay? But that's another story. So then you say, well, wait a second. We can only find 4 to 5% of the entire energy of the universe. Where did the other 96, 95%? What is it? So by studying consciousness, you start at the itty bitty electrons, which are reactionary according to human observation, according to consciousness. And then they become in a specific location upon measurement or being noticed that they're being watched. And then you magnify that into larger other kinds of systems. And like, let's take the human body. If the human body doesn't need its container, it's 100% existing in consciousness as thought. And we definitely have proof that we have a three-dimensional system, not counting time as a fourth dimension, just say, keep it simple, three-dimensional system, and we coexist with another dimension that's a consciousness kind of existing dimension. That is where we go after the container dies. And the proof, the point of the whole damn essay program, was to provide proof. So we said, we want no more than 25,000 words per essay. And the winners are going to make a lot of money, providing you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You're proving to the court that this is real. And so you better use everything you can think of to prove that it's real. Well, we had 7 amazing judges. Dr. Brian Weiss, I don't want to name them all, but people who had been students of and studying of the paranormal a lot of their lives, and they had a lot of information to be able to judge the good, bad, and the ugly of an essay. Jeffrey Mishlove won first place. Leo Rookaby won third place, and he works here for us. And then Vin Lam Pummel, the Dutch doctor, he won second place.
We're talking about BICS, the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, which is the primary focus of your work.
Yeah.
You published these in a hardcover form. Beautiful books. I've got a set of these. I haven't read them all, but I've read a lot of them, and it's just wonderful stuff.
So we had 1,400, we had 38 countries represented. And I know we're getting off the UFO subject, but in a way we're not.
We'll come back.
In a way we're not.
Right.
Okay. And spirituality is really important as a conversation. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. As what is the whole point? What gives you meaning and purpose in life? And so anyway, so we have 1,400 come in, and so the judges down selected to 205, something like that, essays, and they had 5 months to read all these things. And I thought, okay, we're going to have a first, second. This is how naive I was. We're going to have a first, second, and third prize, $950,000. Well, about 60 days, they had 5 months, about 60 days before they should give their decisions, they're all arguing, the judges, between themselves. There's no way they can compact this into 3 winners. So we have to expand it. About 30 days, they're arguing all over again. I had to expand it again. So now we are at 28 winners and $1,800,000 in awards, plus really nice crystal trophies, to put on your mantle. And because these were so good, the essays were so damn good so we compiled all of them, and they're on our website, and we put them into print in these books.
We also recorded interviews. Matt Adams, who's here with us today, Matt Adams and I interviewed the winners, recorded it on videotape. We're going to have to put those up on your podcast website.
Yeah, December 4th of 21, we had a big party at the plant in one of the big bays there, with a 80-foot ceiling on it. And we had a great time that night, nice food and everything. And everybody got up to talk about their awards, and everything was presented to them, the check and the trophies and all. And that was a great gathering.
You and I are going to have a deep dive into consciousness matters in this format, in the Bigelow podcast. A lot of shows, I hope, assuming we're going to continue. But I think it sort of brings it full circle to the question that started it off. What do you want to do with this? How far do you want to go? Both on the UFO topic and consciousness. I mean, you've been involved in UFO research for a long time at the highest levels with government agencies, government officials, presidents, et cetera. You've learned a lot of things that you have not shared with the public. How far you're willing to go now in this format?
As long as I have and as much as it takes. And I need to close something that I started in this discussion.
Sure.
So we have an open system in the universe. We have a power that's 95, 96% of it that we don't know what it is, dark energy and dark matter. But it controls it. We don't have entropy. We don't have disintegration of our galaxies. So the only thing that seems to me that's left is how big can we measure consciousness? How powerful is it? If we can do a little bitty teeny thing with an electron on a screen, on a monitor, just by willing and wanting it to do it. And the people are funny, they're performers. They'll grunt, they'll strain, they'll jump up and down, all kinds of things to try and make it happen. And most of them have some effect. Some have really good effects, substantial effects, but it's an individual relationship that you try to establish as to your technique is individual type of technique. So the research says that on the planet Earth, just one little planet, that 100 billion people have died. I didn't believe this at first. I said, no, I don't know how we can be at 8.25 billion. And how do you get to 100 billion people that have pre-existed and already died? Well, apparently it's a function of that a lot of people didn't live very long. A lot of propagation, a lot of births happened. A lot of people died very young. So you didn't have longevity for most of mankind's existence until just recently. We took till 1800 to acquire the first billion. 1900, though, we got the second billion. So in just 100 years, it took us to do what the 1800 years, or all the years before that up to 1800 had acquired. And now we're doing it just like about every decade. It's really sped up. And we will be at maybe 12 billion. It's not before too long. And that might be a density tipping point kind of issue. If other things don't cause us more problems than that before we get there, and maybe sooner than later. So 100 billion people have passed away, have passed over, as they say, right? And we're just one planet. So what's the amount of, if the universe is virtually unlimited, we know at least for out to 34 billion light years, and that's a radius. That's not a diameter. That's a radius. That's a long friggin' way. That's a huge distance. What's the size of the consciousness that has passed over and now exists in a different form that's more powerful than we and you and I are sitting here? You have more ability, George. You will have more ability than you have in your container. In many different ways. And so as that, and you become a word that is hard to digest, the word immortal. And as a researcher, you understand this, but it doesn't make sense to somebody that's not. It's goofy that you become immortal as thought. It is totally goofy thinking, because we can't relate to anything that's immortal. Nothing that we know from the time we're born to the time we die lasts forever. Nothing does. Planets don't, and so we have a hard time imagining that. But let's just say, for the sake of conversation, it's true. Let's just say for the sake of conversation, all of those essays, all the scientists, all the people that have done this all their lives are right, and you do survive permanent bodily death. That's an enormous body of consciousness that's almost inconceivably huge. And over a period of time, it grows in spirituality. And the research says there's only two things that really become important: to acquire love and knowledge. Ultimately, that's the only two things that really matter. But even if you're on the other side, it doesn't mean that upon death you are immediately an angel. The good, bad, and the ugly is still, your personality is still there. And we can talk about more of this later, but as a spirit, my definition of your character as a spirit is your soul. And so that defines, your character defines what kind of spirit you are. But over time, you become more and more, and then reincarnation is also part of the topic, which a lady I used to know in high school one time gave me a book on reincarnation. I said, oh my God, don't give me this. I don't have time for this stuff. And then years later, I started reading it and getting into these subjects, and I realized, oh my gosh, Marilyn was right. This book is amazing. And then the more you read, the more you study, the more amazing it gets. So, but at some point, incarnations are irrelevant. You don't learn anything more. There's nothing to learn. Remember, learning is half of it. Knowledge is half of it. And love is the other part. So, so then you grow in spirituality that is tremendous. and your knowledge and your ability is huge, is tremendous as well. So what does this start to accumulate? I think what you have is a super collective consciousness, a super collective consciousness that's unbelievably powerful, is a creator consciousness. So at the very least, it's the source of unifying control. I think it represents dark energy and dark matter. And I think it maintains control of the other 4% of the energy.
You know,
Boy, have I put everybody to sleep.
consciousness has become sort of a buzzword in UFO circles. I hear it from people tossed out all the time. They never explain it. And I don't think they know their butt from a hole in the ground when they're trying to say that the two are connected. You have studied this. You and your team have studied it. And we're going to dive into it. And
not just studied it, we have experiences.
Yeah.
We have experiences that you have to pinch yourself to try to be sure that all those different things really happen.
Well, how it fits into the UFO mystery takes a little harder time to explain, but we will do it in the course of our conversations. I want to take it
Well,
back.
Lacatski knew it though.
Yeah, I know.
Lacatski, he gave us instructions not to ignore anything that was not just UFO kind of the genre of ufology. That if we had other kinds of mystifications, things that mystified us, we were to absolutely go down that path and try to do experiments. And I've done different kinds of experiments hardly anybody knows about. And I one of our security personnel and the ranch manager were involved in those experiments that I did. And those were for my own edification, my own information and knowledge, to just see what could be done using consciousness at the time. Can you have an effect on things at a distance? And the answer is absolutely, you can.
We will dive into all those and get into details about what happened to your employees and to you and to others that we know really well. Just bring it back to the UFO conversation, which is where we started with the first episode.
Yeah.
The fact that you talked to the president, basic level, you wanted to see how much he knows. And especially, I think you wanted to know, is he aware that people who work for him in the executive branch are pushing back against his proposals for transparency? And you have direct personal experience with how that works because of the AAWSAP program. Talk about a combination of consciousness and UFOs. That's where it started. Jim Lacatski, and I know there are those out there who say AAWSAP wasn't real. It was some kind of a sweetheart thing where you got federal money. Harry Reid did it all for you. And the fact that the documents, the reports that you produced have not been made public, that shows that it's not real. So let's go back to the start of that. AAWSAP. This was an offer that walked in the door. It was a phone call from the DIA to you, right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure it was real. I had to authenticate him, and he knew that. And so he gave me the means to be able to, information to be able to authenticate who the hell is this Jim Lacatski guy that claims yada, 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 yada.
Is it a phone call or a letter?
I think it was a letter.
And what did he say?
He introduced himself, and he says, I think he wanted to see the Skinwalker Ranch, and he was aware of it. And I thought, wow, this is, and so I think he mentioned something about we need to secure. I'm not sure if he said something about secure funding, but there was something there that caused me to contact Harry Reid, and say, okay, look, here's this letter. This is something I think that's super important because it's the first time that we actually have a government agency, and not something like all the other programs we mentioned earlier, Blue Book and all the others that were kind of scams, and the Condon Report, they were scams. And so this guy Lacatski is legitimate. And so Harry said, well, okay, yeah. He said, I think, I know who and how we can do this. and he contacted Ted Stevens and Daniel Inouye, and Ted Stevens had already had his own sighting. So he wasn't difficult to convince, yeah, there's a lot to this. So he had a personal sighting experience, if you will, just, it's something that was undeniably anomalous. And so Harry got the money, and so we went forward, and we have BASS, our organization. We have the 38 papers. We have copies of everything.
The DIRDs.
We have everything. We have all the other papers going up to about approximately 100. So DIA has those someplace.
But they deny it. They say we don't have them.
Well, I don't know. What they buried. They could be buried in a friggin' trailer or the back of a car somewhere in the trunk, and it's put into a cellar. I don't know where it is, but we have ours. We have copies of everything. I don't think it's our business to go around the government and divulge ours without sanction of proof, without approval. Without approval. I feel uncomfortable about that. I don't mind the 38 papers. I think beyond that, I'm uncomfortable by not having some kind of official ass covering approval.
Well, I released more than a dozen of those papers myself with permission from people who are involved in the program. And
you're still alive and talking?
I'm still around. But the bulk of it, as Dr. Lacatski and Colin Kelleher have explained, and you've explained, there's a lot of really sensitive stuff in there. Personal medical information. There's the identities of people who worked for the government.
People's names and everything are in there. And in today's world, that's terrible if it got out. And they would have no privacy.
So if that were ever to be made public, somebody has to go through and scrub it. And that's a big job because it's a gigantic pile of information. Dr. Lacatski explained to me, your organization, BASS, you had 50 full-time investigators, 50. Making it the largest program of its kind ever funded by the U.S. government. You had maybe 75 total employees, but you had 50 people who are out there taking notes. There are tens of thousands of pages of notes that went into 7,500 pages of documents that were sent to DIA on a regular basis, and that's never been released. So there are those who quibble and say, well, it must not exist. And it's preposterous and juvenile to say that kind of thing. It does exist. You had a regular schedule of reports that you had to submit, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I gave Senator Reid personal briefings all the time. I had to go to Searchlight where he lived. And he had his security guards there, of course. And so I would give him briefings. And actually, that's a good segue.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do some more promoting of your book. What did I do with my glasses? Wait a second. Because he was concerned, the senator was concerned after our briefings. We got to a point to where they fall down. It's like car keys, where you need a chain around your neck for stuff.
Believe me, that's my life. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, this is a good segue, George, because Harry was in your book here. That's also Lacatski joined in this. By the end of May 2009, now the program initiated in September of 2008, Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid was a worried man. A few days previously, he had received a thorough briefing on the progress of the new AAWSAP BASS effort from Robert Bigelow and the breadth and scope of the investigative horsepower of the fledgling organization had astonished the senior politician. Given what he had just heard from Bigelow, Reid was concerned that BASS would get too high a profile from DOD in the near future. So we would become noticed. And that essentially was what this is saying. And that the AAWSAP contract would be exposed and essentially unprotected from potential opponents at DOD. So Jim wasn't always in sync with the whole crowd at the Department of Defense by any means. But there was another reason for worry. Over the years, Reid had caught various straws in the wind that both Russia and China were involved with and heavily invested in UAP-based advanced technology research programs. By May of 2009, Reid was concerned that the United States was asleep at the wheel. Well, why is this important? In Reid's mind, there was a grave danger that China and Russia, who were not similarly handcuffed, would succeed in taking quantum leaps forward from exploiting UAP-based hardware and thus gain an irreversible technological upper hand over the United States. That's a real concern. We talked yesterday, the last time we had our podcast, we talked about the horsepower that private companies might be able to have beyond what they currently have if they had more money and especially more ability to hire people as scientists to help them back engineer. China and Russia don't have those handcuffs, obviously. You know, they can make people disappear if they want to, really easy. But so their governments are entirely different than ours. And so we are at a disadvantage. And that's what bothered Harry. That's what concerned him, is he began to realize this, that this is a really national, it's not just that UFOs could cause, airplane accidents and those kinds of things, and cause airplanes to try to avoid this and have caused damage that way. But more seriously was that we are getting behind further and further every decade.
Meaning if the technology were to fall in the hands of one of our adversaries, we'd be in trouble.
There are, yes, and there are things, George, I am aware. The back engineering effort is not easy.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Not too much. I don't want to. But it's not easy. So it would be a big help, if there were a good coordinated effort of support and still in devout secrecy. There has to be. But it's just not easy because it's the peculiarity, it can be a problem.
Reid had access to a lot of briefings and information that I would never see. Maybe it's stuff that you would be able to see, but his concern about Russia in particular was well-founded. And, I was able to obtain some documents. You guys took it to a whole different level and
how the hell
made
did you ever
sense of
get out of there?
Yeah, it's a long story. But your organization, BASS, took it to a whole different level, way beyond what I could do, and made sense of it. And you recognize the Russians really did have a big program. They were trying to reverse engineer this stuff.
And that's
1993. Yeah.
So over 30 years ago.
And you made reference in our first conversation about a crash, which the Russians, something crashed. The Russians retrieved it. They started working on it. They developed a powerful laser. You can't say it, but I can because it's come out from people who we all know. That crash occurred in Kazakhstan. And what they developed was an incredibly powerful laser, a weapon. And initially they had problems with it. It caused a lot of damage, might have killed people. But somebody involved with direct knowledge of that came forward, told it to our intelligence agencies, and you learned about it, right?
Yeah, very senior guy in their program. Huge, very, very senior guy.
So that would be one reason for Reid's concern. And he became concerned, look, we got to keep BASS, the AAWSAP program, we got to keep it quiet because he knew that somebody would the long knives would be out and try to cut it if they knew it existed. Jim Lacatski is brilliant in many ways, a rocket scientist for DIA, but his brilliance in writing up the program that became AAWSAP was you don't mention UFOs. You're not going to mention werewolves or the ranch or alien technology. None of that stuff was written in the proposal in the contracts that you signed, right?
Right. Right.
What was the purpose? What was the unspoken purpose?
We had the parochial stuff, the usual stuff, lift, propulsion, cloaking, not the real interesting, tricky stuff.
But everybody involved knew what it was about.
Yeah.
You knew what the purpose was.
And we had permission to go wherever the evidence, wherever we could have reliable evidence and anything was anomalous, we had permission to chase it.
Jim Lacatski and now Jay Stratton, a name we haven't mentioned, but it's now public now. They worked together at DIA, and they both explained, both in their own areas, were seeing UFO reports that were startling. They kept seeing them over and over, and they thought, we need to do something about it. And then they read Hunt for the Skinwalker, and they thought, Skinwalker Ranch is a place you could study where you have a reasonable chance of seeing UFOs, and they came to you and pitched this idea. So the letter comes in from Lacatski to you, and you guys go there, right?
Yeah.
Let's take a trip.
Yeah, and we didn't create the Aerospace Advanced Weapons Application Program, AAWSAP. That wasn't our acronym or our name, but you notice the word weapons are in there. And because it was a Department of War, DOW program. And because of that, that's where the money could be sequestered. If it had gone someplace else, it would have been lost. So it had to go to DOW. And so that's how AAWSAP became the program. ATIP was nothing by comparison.
AAWSAP, the largest government-funded investigation into these phenomena that we know of that ever existed.
Right.
So your goals follow the evidence where it leads, but UFO was the primary focus. That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
But
we had permission. Everything else was fair game because it was connected too, and Lacatski knew that it was connected. So if you have a circle open up the size of a large pipe, and something crawls out of that, but your naked eye can't see it, but somebody on night vision goggles can see it, that's certainly anomalous in an area where UFOs are abundant in the whole Uinta Basin, not just that ranch, but other sister ranches contiguous to the ranch and others. And we had tremendous cooperation with the Sheriff's Department and the BIA. The Bureau of Indian Affairs those guys were great. The Sheriff's Department were great, and they had more encounters and stuff than you can shake a stick.
Going way back.
Oh, they're what they chased with their cars and the experiences they had. It was their information was great. So we interviewed a lot of people in the whole area, and we were getting information not just on the ranch. No, we had so much stuff. We could cover a lot of area.
Dr. Lacatski comes to Las Vegas. You jump on your plane, you fly to northeastern Utah, and you took him on a little tour.
Yeah.
And he had an experience right off the bat. Looking back, does it seem like to you that it was designed for him to make an impression?
Well, yeah, because of what happened once we got there. Within 45 minutes of actually arriving on the property, there was a custom exhibition for him. But before that, we're in my plane, and he's looking out the window, and we're coming close, to Vernal, where the airport is, and we still have to get in a car and drive about 30 minutes to the ranch. But he's looking down, and he said, "Oh, well, there's the ranch." So he had aerial photographs to where he knew it visually. Yeah, because he spotted the mesa and the topography and everything, and so we could see it. We're that low because we're on approach. And he said, "Oh, there's the ranch." I said, "Yeah, by golly, yep, you're right. That's it." And so I was going to mention something else too. I'll save it for later. So we get in our car and we drive there. We get to the ranch. We go through the gates and everything, and our security guards are all around, and so we go into the new homestead. It's still an old building, but the new homestead, and where Gene Dietz and Richard live. They're the managers, and She was a spunky gal.
Yes.
And a lot of stuff happened all the time in her house. Because
Yes.
that's where Sherman lived. Terry Sherman lived, and his wife lived there too, and their 2 kids. And why there were peculiar locks on the doors and things, right? So we're sitting actually, and the story is this. We were in the dining area of the living room. We weren't in the kitchen. We were in the dining area of the living room around a rectangular table. And there were 4 of us. And Jim was the only one looking into the kitchen. The rest of us weren't. We weren't facing in the kitchen at all. And we had been on the ranch about 45 minutes altogether when we had started that meeting. So what Jim was exposed to and saw happened as it was, though it was customized for him, which it obviously was. He was the only one that saw it. And what he saw floating above the floor, about sink countertop high, was a metal-looking object that was tubular, like in the music album Tubular Bells.
Right. Mike
Okay.
Oldfield. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The
that's
Exorcist.
and that's what it looked like. And Lacatski was very slow in talking to me about anything. But on the flight back, and he said, "Did you?" And on the flight, he said, "Did you see anything?" I said, "No."
So he doesn't say anything at the ranch. It's not until you're on your way back to Las
We're
Vegas.
on our way back, and he's saying, "Did you see anything?" And I said, "Well, no. Where? When?" He said, "When we were in the house, when we were having our meeting." I said, "No." So over a period of time, he loosened up more and more and more, and finally divulged everything about what he saw, and described it in detail as much as he could. And it was there for a significant, it wasn't like 2 or 3 seconds. It was there for a significant period of time. A lot of times you see something that comes and goes very fast, and or you see evidence that can linger for a very long time if you don't disturb it, if you don't change what has been changed, that could be there for weeks or months, right? So it depends on what the demonstration, the nature of the demonstration is. Or something dissolves, and well, then that's going to be a matter of seconds or minutes or whatever. So this had been there, so it really sunk into him, and it was customized, and so he was off and running he was an experiencer right off the bat as a government employee, in addition to all the other people, all the other government people that showed up, and so Jim was the first one.
It's amazing. I mean, looking back at it, it seemed like it did, whatever is there, designed it for him to make an impression. And then he goes back to D.C., he designs the outline of a program, he tells it to you, you call Reid, and then AAWSAP is born.
AAWSAP was born.
It's interesting that the contract that you signed, the documents that have been out there, they don't say UFOs, UAPs, poltergeists, unconventional technology. It's very vague on purpose. And it leads back to the comments that Harry Reid made. You didn't want anyone else in D.C. to know about it. We're talking about adversaries, not just Moscow or Beijing, adversaries within government who would try to kill it if they knew it existed.
Yeah. For a variety of different reasons, they would kill it.
And that's what happened. That's what happened.
It is what happened. It lasted for 27 months. It was a 2-year program, and it was killed, I think, in December of 2010.
People forget that you announced it on the air with me in a week after you signed the contract. You went on Coast to Coast with me and said, "Hey, we've got a new initiative." You said, "We have a partner." You didn't say it was a government partner, didn't say it was DIA. We've got a partner, and we're launching this new initiative, and we're going to start investigating UFOs at a different level at the time. There were the breadcrumbs right there if anybody was paying attention.
We were excited about it. We were honored to be able to do something for the government, and that we thought was important and helpful. Yeah.
Let's talk about something else that I think will be incredibly newsworthy. As part of the agreement that you signed with DIA, there were provisions that you would modify the Bigelow Aerospace plant in anticipation of receiving some materials. It doesn't say what those materials are, but you allowed me to talk about it before Congress. Can we go into that?
Well, go ahead.
You sound so enthused. Materials meaning from somewhere else, right? Or you didn't know where they're from.
Well, let me just shift a little bit to the chair here. So I didn't even mention it to Lacatski or to anybody. I had my own approach to becoming SAPT, to being an unacknowledged special access program. That's at a very high level, and the only way that happens is if you have a need to know that is so serious that it behooves people in the know to embrace you, to give you information only as it applies to your situation. And so Matt's giving us a message here. So I gotta.
Well, we can keep going. We'll just cut it in half.
Well, we can also start this in a next show too.
Okay.
So, and let me just conclude this part of our podcast with this, that my personal approach was I could offer something to aerospace companies that had hardware and different materials, different things, and there was something that they didn't have, none of them had, that I could create that gave me a reason to have a need to know, because I needed to know in order to provide them with what I could provide them with. I needed to have enough information as to what I was having to accommodate in order for them to have the best new advantage that they currently had none whatsoever in being able to do something.
We will get into the details if you're willing to go that far. Just the contract you signed with DIA for AAWSAP, that BASS would sign with DIA, provided for you making some modifications to the Bigelow Aerospace plant. And what you had told me back in those days was you spent a lot of your own money to make that happen. It did happen, right? You did prepare for some eventualities.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can cut that out too if you want, but it was in the New York Times story. Bigelow Aerospace made some changes to its aerospace plant.
Well, we were always building and expanding that whole facility all the time, and you know we have a 12-story bay, 120 feet. We have 106-foot hook height. We have We have a mock-up of a future expandable spacecraft that is over 2,000 cubic meters. The International Space Station is only 935 cubic meters, and that includes the American side, the Russian side, the European module, the Japanese module, and the Americans only have about 450 cubic meters of that 935. That's the only thing that we actually own, that we have on the American side. And our first 3 modules were created by Russia because we didn't have any experience. Speaking on behalf of NASA. We didn't have any experience with habitable systems. They did. With the Mir, they had Almaz, they had spacecraft before we did, and they had propulsion systems stronger than we had initially before we went to the moon. In the late 50s, early 60s, they could throw more mass than we could. So that was from a nuclear bomb delivery perspective, that was a huge concern. So we were in a race, more than just going to the moon. We were in a race to have delivery power that equaled or surpassed theirs. I'm just thinking of So we were always expanding things, and we built very large mock-ups, and we could do systems. Our small craft expandable system was 330 cubic meters. 75% of the entire space that the Americans already have on the ISS, and 3 times the size of an average module. Average metallic system on the ISS is about 105, 110 cubic meters. Our B330 is 330. But we could do one, if we wanted to do one of 600, we could do a 600 cubic meter and have tremendous margins of safety. And so we did a mock-up of 2,000 cubic meters. And so we were doing things bigger and larger so you can accommodate bigger and more massive stuff.
For simple reasons. There are no labs to speak of. There are no manufacturing facilities in space. If we had them, there are things you could do in zero gravity that you can't do on Earth, right?
Now, there's an idea.
Yeah. I mean, and Bigelow Aerospace was building these inflatable habitats that were so much stronger than metal frames and much more transportable, cheaper to get them up there, cheaper to use, but they were safer, and no one had it.
So far less expensive. It's unbelievable. The difference, the delta in cost. I mean, we spent $100 billion to build the ISS as it currently exists. $100 billion back in dollars in $2,000 values. 26 years ago, and we can build an order of that. We can have a system that would be 1/20th of that cost and be larger.
The technology you developed, the systems you developed, you have dozens of patents in your name that were part of this, are still, even though Bigelow Aerospace has been inactive for many years, those systems you develop are still more advanced than what has been developed in your absence.
Yeah, I am a kind of a homegrown engineer guy, and I have 29 patents to my name, and it's kind of fun to try to tinker with stuff and solve different kind of problems, and so we moved very quickly. I built the company starting bought the land in 2000 and built our first building in 2001. Then we added on. Built the last one in 2012. We have 375,000 square feet of space, but we have a huge amount of cubic volume. And we launched our first spacecraft in 2006, our second one in 2007, and then Beam, which is attached right now this minute to the ISS in 2016. And so that gave us a TRL, technical readiness level of 9, which is the highest you can get, because we have a photograph with 6 astronauts inside the beam. It's small.
Yeah.
It was cramped, but we have that photograph, so that gives us the highest proficiency of any aerospace or any company with expandable systems. And they're safer and more durable and bulletproof than metallic systems are. Without a radiation contamination component, which is huge. Background galactic radiation is a serious problem. Huge once you get out of our magnetosphere. And ditto for Mars. Mars only has 1% of the atmosphere of Earth. There's no magnetosphere on Mars. So you're walking around there, you're getting cancer potential, in a short time.
You created the possibility of having places to go up there, that there are habitats, there are labs, there's manufacturing capacity.
Bigelow Aerospace is a destination company.
Right.
Yeah.
So somebody else can work on how to get there. You gave them some place to go. And that would be incredibly attractive to a big company that wants to have a presence in space, or a government, right?
Yeah.
So you had a carrot to offer.
Sure. Especially if you want to use these systems for things that have never been used before. There's a variety of different kinds of things that you can do, and volume really matters.
I'm leading up to that let's say you're in negotiations, there's something you want that's stashed away somewhere. You had something to offer in return.
Well, that's just speculation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to leave it at that?
Yeah, we can leave it at that. Well, we're coming back to it. because, I mean, it's an important thing. You're talking about the gatekeepers. Our first conversation was about the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Companies
Yeah.
that have given their all. They've kept
Yeah.
the secret. They did what our government asked them to do for 80 years, and they've done their best to try to figure out the technology, reverse engineer it. And you think that they should be given a clean bill of health in return for the work that they've done on the behalf of the American public, right?
You want to free them up.
Yeah.
It's not just that you want to, it's not a matter of you giving them something. It's that they haven't asked for anything. You should cause no harm. You should free them up. And you should be lucky to have the cooperation and all of the information that they bring to the table. Yeah.
Well, in future episodes, we have so much ground still to cover. I want to go into more detail about what AAWSAP did, what you guys found out, the kinds of products that you produced, meaning reports and things like that, what you learned, how it relates to consciousness, where consciousness research is going to go. We're going to take a dive into Skinwalker Ranch. People asked about your bowling ball after they first saw the first episode. So we'll talk about that. We'll go anywhere you want to go and have as many conversations as you want. And I think it's going to be fun.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
All right.
All right. I just want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch us and listen to what we have to say. I want to thank George Knapp for being a terrific host. And we would appreciate any serious questions that you have that we may want to talk about. If you have questions, we would like to ask you to actually drop us a note. If you would mail these to the following address, 4640 Southeastern Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89119, Bigelow Podcast. Thank you.